Rishad, it's great to have you in studio. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So talk to me about what inspired you to write this book and the thought process behind it.
What inspired me to write the book is a belief that between 2020 and 2030, work will change more in these 10 years than it has in the previous 50. And it's going to change in more dramatic ways than just simply where somebody works, why somebody works, how somebody works, but more importantly, even what work is will change.
Yeah.
And I began to realize that most companies and leaders were not seeing the big picture and just fixating on things like return to the office.
And you know, leaders struggle with the where, when, why, and how, right? So talk to me about what you think was the toughest. Where do you think is the toughest in these various situations, and why?
So the toughest actually is for companies and their leaders to rethink themselves from being bosses to being leaders. We are in the age of de-bossification.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons people do not want to return to the office is they do not want to return to the boss. Right?
So what makes a good leader versus a boss? Talk to me about that differentiation.
So the big difference is all leaders have a little bit of boss in them, so it's not like all bosses are bad. But a boss spends most of their time, she or he, in allocating, delegating, monitoring, checking in, and reporting. And a leader spends their time building, making, creating, mentoring, and guiding. And to lead is to operate with a zone of influence. To be a boss is to operate with a zone of control.
Yes.
And so what people did not want to do is they did not want to go back to a zone of control. As I've said, the animals have left the zoo, they're not coming back, even if you put good meat in the cages.
How do you strike that perfect balance?
The idea really is to ask a simple question, not, for instance, in this whole idea of the office, of returning to the office, but how do I maximize the benefits of in-person interaction in a world where I'm trying to attract and retain world-class talent and compete with companies who are starting today with a blank sheet of paper, an agile marketplace, and AI.
And speaking of AI, where does AI and Gen AI fit into this broader strategy?
So AI, even today, is significantly underhyped. And one of the things that my book explains is all of us, you and me and a lot of us, are knowledge workers. We are now living in a world where knowledge is going to be free.
What do you mean by that statement?
For instance, in the last 24 hours or 36 hours, OpenAI has released a new sort of agent, and it's called Deep Research. This is different than Google Deep Research, but Deep Research. It will basically do McKinsey-level research in approximately 3 to 4 hours for $200 a month.
Wow.
So if that's true, you kind of wonder, like, how much are we paying for knowledge itself? So it won't be knowledge. So the future really is about AI plus HI. And HI is not just human intelligence, but it's human insight, human intuition, human interaction. And so to a great extent, AI is deeply underhyped. It's going to change the world as we know it. But a lot of people are asking a very wrong question, which is, what will AI do to them? And instead you should ask, what will AI do for me?
Exactly. Talk to me about how your time at Publicis Group shaped your view on the future of workplace.
So when I was at Publicis, where I remained an advisor 6 years after I stopped working full-time, but I worked around the world with, probably at any given time, I would visit 50 companies a year and 10 or 12 countries. And what became intensely clear and became also true in my first book is that most people don't actually do all the things that people claim they do in the office. So for instance, a lot of people say you have to come back to the office to learn, to create ideas, to build relationships. All right. In the real world, to build relationships, you went to bars and restaurants. To be creative, you'd go to offsites. To learn, you'd go to events and conferences. None of those existed in the office. And what I began to realize around the world is what was true was humans. And how do you inspire humans to learn? And if you say that's what a company is, which is getting teams aligned against a cause with humans that are constantly upgrading their mental operating systems, you have to think very differently about work.
And you have to be open to that that different concept of thinking.
Absolutely. And to a great extent also, and one of the key things with my book is the first 5 chapters explains why COVID is the least important thing in the future of work. So everyone's fixated on that.
Yeah.
But if you think about multiple generations at work, we
Yeah,
now have 5
exactly.
generations, aging populations. You basically think about technology
Yep.
and marketplaces and a whole bunch of other stuff. Then you have to actually think about work so broadly that you change the strategy of your firm, you change the way you measure, you change your organizational design, and obviously
It's
you
a
think
domino
about
effect.
leadership.
They all intertwine into
Exactly.
in each
Exactly.
other. Well, thank you so much. It was a pleasure speaking with you again, Rishad Tobaccowala. He is the author and former chief strategist at growth officer at Publicis Group. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much.